The nuclear-armed dictatorship in North Korea and the authoritarian government of Russia are moving closer together in a strategic alliance aimed at undermining U.S. influence and threatening America's allies. It's an alliance that took on new prominence in June 2024 when Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-Un held a summit in Pyongyang, inking an agreement to militarily support each other in the event that either faces armed aggression by any outside power. North Korea already provides missiles to Russian forces in Ukraine, and Putin provides political cover for Kim's expanding nuclear arsenal. I'm Guy Taylor, National Security Editor at The Washington Times, and for this edition of the Threat Status Influencer Series, I'm lucky to be joined by Joseph DeTrani, a former U.S. intelligence official and diplomat who's helped shape American foreign policy across successive administrations, both Republican and Democrat. Joe, you're a former Associate Director of National Intelligence, a former member of the Senior Intelligence Service of the CIA, and you were once the top American negotiator in denuclearization talks with North Korea, Russia, and China. Thank you for joining me. Let's jump right into this. The June 2024 Putin-Kim summit sparked unease and questions about whether Vladimir Putin is suddenly attempting to unseat Communist Party-ruled China as North Korea's primary ally in the 21st century. You wrote in a recent op-ed that Russia wants to incite conflict in East Asia. Help me unpack this and why it matters for the U.S.
Well, I think for the United States, it does matter big time. Vladimir Putin to the DPRK, North Korea, on the 19th of June was very significant. They penned and agreed to a comprehensive strategic partnership. This is something they resurrected going back to 1961 when they had if you will, a friendship, cooperation, mutual assistance treaty. This has been resurrected now in 2024, basically saying that North Korea will come to the defense of the Russian Federation if there's any conflict, and vice versa. The Russian Federation will come to the assistance of North Korea if there's any conflict. It's emblematic of a new alliance.
Kim Jong-un's grandfather had a treaty with the Soviet Union. There was this mutual defense treaty, but it fell by the wayside with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s. But the Kim regime had the same treaty with only one other country, China, and it has consistently re-upped that treaty over the past few decades, but it never did with Russia.
That's correct.
So is there some significance in that when we look at how China viewed this?
Well, China certainly every 20 years signs this mutual defense treaty, peace and friendship treaty with the DPRK, North Korea. And it was established also in 1961. So every 20 years they sign it. Xi Jinping recently signed it 2 years ago, recently signed this commitment for the next 20 years to work with the People's Republic of China. The Russian Federation, the Soviet Union, let it lapse. The 1961 Friendship, Cooperation, Mutual Assistance Treaty lapsed. And it was only until 2024 with Vladimir Putin that it's been resurrected again.
So it was as if China had really eclipsed Russia as the primary backer after the Cold War.
Absolutely.
But how has China reacted to this latest development? And do you see China, Russia, and North Korea in a kind of three-way alliance? Or is there actually division between China and Russia over this, or that Putin is stepping in, maybe trying to replace China now as the primary North Korea?
I don't see that. I really don't see that. I think there's a little concern if you're sitting in Beijing and you're Xi Jinping, the North Koreans is being truthful to us. We're getting it from Moscow, Vladimir Putin. As to the type of relationship they have. Don't forget, Xi Jinping is a control freak. And this is what he's done in China. He's assertive and he's a control freak. He wants a say into the relationship between, in my view, between North Korea and the Russian Federation. But certainly China has the most influence on North Korea. So I don't think North Korea, to be my view, Kim Jong-un would be moving as quickly as he has with Vladimir Putin if he wasn't getting a signal from Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party, go for it. You can do it.
Interesting. There's also an intersection here with Russia's war in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
It's been going on for 3 years. U.S. officials, South Korean intelligence, they all say that North Korea is providing certain artillery shells and missiles for the Russian army inside Ukraine. The Yoon government in South Korea responded somewhat angrily to the Putin-Kim summit and announced that it would now South Korea would consider directly arming Ukraine, something the Biden administration has been pressuring South Korea to do, but that South Korea has been resisting. Is that an escalation? Would it be wise for South Korea to begin directly arming Ukraine?
Well, 2 points on that, Guy. One is certainly Vladimir Putin, and now with Kim Jong-Un, North Korea, signing this comprehensive strategic partnership. I think it's a message to the Yoon Suk-yeol government, a very powerful message to the Yoon Suk-yeol government from the Russian Federation, indeed from North Korea, that North Korea now has another patron. They'll be getting assistance from the Russian Federation if there is conflict with the South or something like that. So yes, should South Korea put weapons to, if you will, Ukraine so they can defend themselves on the table? Absolutely, they should put that on the table. And that's where Russia has to be very concerned, because certainly they don't want South Korea providing weaponry to the government of Ukraine.
Let's shift and look at U.S. policy towards North Korea a little more closely. Following former President Trump's approach of direct engagement with Kim Jong-Un, 2 summits in Singapore and Hanoi, the Biden administration has returned to what's referred to as strategic patience. Some people say that that's actually ignoring the problem or not really engaging, and that the problem is North Korea expanding its nuclear arsenal in violation of somewhat old at this point UN Security Council resolutions. What do you make of the Biden administration's policy, and why has it pursued this policy?
You know, strategic patience, I don't think has really worked well with North Korea. In fact, I think it's been a failure with North Korea. I think as you ignore North Korea, they build more nuclear weapons. And they test those nuclear weapons, and they build more delivery systems. I mean, most recently, Hwasong-18, an intercontinental ballistic missile that could reach the whole of the United States, solid fuel, mobile. North Korea has built up their nuclear arsenal in a significant way. But God, to your point though, Guy, strategic patience sort of has been said, look, if we can contain North Korea and we can deter North Korea, that's not too bad a policy. The fact of the matter is, North Korea has not been contained, as we just saw recently with the visit of Vladimir Putin. They are not contained. They have China, they have the Russian Federation, they certainly have Iran, Venezuela, and some of these other rogue states. So containment hasn't worked. And deterrence, we've deterred them from using a nuclear weapon, but they're not suicidal. Kim Jong-un is not going to use a nuclear weapon because he knows it will be the end of the North Korea regime. We've not deterred them building more nuclear weapons, more missile delivery systems. So you got to wonder, containment and deterrence, has that really worked? I think the consensus is it really hasn't.
What is your assessment on why the Biden administration has embraced strategic patience? Is it a lack of bandwidth in the foreign policy establishment? The right people aren't in the right jobs? Is it incompetence? Or is there actually a strategic reason for it? Is the administration trying to appease China or Russia by ignoring the North Korea problem?
I don't think it's a question of appeasing anyone. I think the administration, there is a limited bandwidth also, given what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Ukraine, et cetera. But I also think there's a sense that, look, if you can control, if you can contain North Korea and they're not suicidal and they're not going to cause a conflict because that would be the end of their regime, sort of just put them on the sidelines, and maybe things will sort of come to the fore. Maybe things will change from within. Maybe the people, 23 plus million people, would say, malnourishment, starvation, that's enough. And hopefully there will be some sort of a transformation of governance in North Korea. This policy of strategic patience that you mentioned, Guy, it's been going on. It's not only the Biden administration. This has been going on beyond that during the Obama administration also.
Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton. Yeah. It changed with Trump. Let's just look at a hypothetical of the possibility of a second Trump administration. Donald Trump got a lot of criticism across the board from U.S. media, critics. But one area where there was quite a bit of interest in his foreign policy was his engagement with North Korea. Yeah. How do you see, if there is a second Trump administration, how do you see the U.S. policy shifting?
This goes back to 1994. North Korea, Kim Il-sung, the grandfather of Kim Jong-Un, Kim Jong-il, his father, now Kim Jong-un, they've always wanted a relationship with the United States, not the Russian Federation. It's now shifted to, they've basically, what we're hearing from Kim Jong-un is, we've given up on the United States. There's no way we can do business with you because you've sort of put us in a corner, basically saying you could ignore us and things will change organically and you don't have to do anything with that. And we saw that in Hanoi with former President Donald Trump. It didn't go well. He lost face. Kim Jong-un lost face, and we're seeing some of the consequences. Personally, I think former President Donald Trump, if he were to be reelected, I think he would engage. I think he would reach out. My personal view, I think Kim Jong-un would respond. Because I think in his heart of hearts, he knows North Korea's relationship is with the United States. It's not with a rogue state. It's not with a pariah Russian Federation. It's with the United States. And I think he would respond to that. So do we have tools? We certainly have tools in our kit. What is it? And we heard that in Hanoi. Sanctions relief. If you can give them something. So Kim Jong-un goes back to his 23+ million people and says, look what I've got. I got some sanctions relief from the United States. Look what we have now. We can talk about intersections, liaison offices in our respective capital. We're moving towards our normal relationship with the United States. This is what his grandfather, what his father, and what he's always wanted. But he recently has decided he can't get it. So he's gone to his default position. His default position is what? The Russian Federation. Comprehensive strategic partnership. A bad mistake on the part of Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un is now telling the United States, look, you haven't been able to contain us. You can no longer impose sanctions on us in the United Nations Security Council because we have Russia and we have China on our side. In fact, it was the Russians who vetoed what? The panel of experts to monitor sanctions. So this is Kim Jong-un sort of saying, you haven't been successful. It doesn't mean he still does not want a normal relationship with the United States, but he wants it on his terms. Accept them as we accepted Pakistan as a nuclear weapon state.
Joseph DeTrani, really insightful, very interesting. Thank you so much for joining me for the Threat Status Influencer series.
For all the work you're doing in the Washington Times.
I'm Guy Taylor. Until next time.